Week 6, lecture number 6. Hello friends, how are you? In the earlier lectures, we discussed about certain models of grief and bereavement, and now the time has come that let us understand the psychology of grief and bereavement. Grief is the feeling one experiences after the death of a loved one or other significant loss. See, in the models we discussed, I gave you a small story and certain conversation between a boy named Ravi and the caregiver, and Ravi was keeping a picture, a photo of her grandma. She had expired and he was very much attached with him, So keeping a photo gives lots of relief to him, this boy. He thinks that mom is present, grandmom is present here with me only. The same way you just see this girl, young girl, I think she had lost her parents, and this is how she is looking at the picture of her parents. Colonel M.N. Rai, he was commanding officer of 42 Rashtriya Rifles, and on 26 January 2015, this brave officer was awarded Yuddha Seva Medal. And on 27 January, just one day after, he was martyred in Jammu and Kashmir because he was carrying out one anti-terrorist operation. And then his mortal remains, they were brought to her home, and his wife is grieving, about the death of her husband. This is young daughter Alka. She's just 11 years old, and she's also grieving because it's a grieving process. You feel so sad, utterly hopeless, helpless, and then you cry, you weep. This is during the cremation when Colonel Rai was given a proper military ceremonial cremation. This young daughter, 11 years old, gives last salute to his father. So grief is there, but then at the same time you carry on doing certain things. Girl loved his father, but now she'll not be able to see him anymore. Grief is a normal internal feeling one experiences in reaction to loss, while bereavement is a state of experiencing that loss. So grief is a psychological feeling, and bereavement is the process how you experience the loss. It's an expression. Although people often suffer emotional pain in response to a loss of anything that is very important to them, like I generally say that major loss, when you lose a job or a friendship or something like that. Grief usually refers to the loss of a loved one through death. Grief is generally referred to the loss of loved one through death. In other terms also, whenever major loss is there, you may you may call it emotional pain or may call it grief. It doesn't make much of a difference. And grief is quite common. It's a psychological process. I mean, there is no need to stop it. Let it come. Like I say, denial is a defense mechanism. It just comes automatically. Particularly while breaking a bad news about the health condition or many other situations are there. More than half of the women in the United States are widowed by the time they reach age 65. More than half. By the time they reach 65 years, they become widow because their husbands die somewhere, sometime. Every year in the United States, 4% of children under the age of 15 experience the loss of a parent through death. So in all these conditions, people do feel grief, normal psychological reaction. There are three types of grief. Anticipatory grief. You are in a particular situation, like you are seriously ill and maybe you are in terminal sickness. So you can anticipate that now the road has to go forward. I cannot reverse the situation. A death has to come, maybe today or maybe tomorrow or after a few days. So you anticipate because this is going to happen, and naturally a loss will occur, and because of that loss of loved one, some sort of grief will be felt by all the people, all the relatives in the family. Anticipatory grief is defined as the feeling of loved ones have in reaction to knowing that someone they care about is terminally ill, and it occurs just before the death, because now only few days are left. You can anticipate. Again, prognosis is like this, and this particular prognosis has been already conveyed to you by doctor, so you know the situation. You can anticipate and plan accordingly. This is normal grieving. It just happens, someone dies, and then it is a process. You may feel a variety of emotions, sadness or loneliness. You might experience it for a number of different reasons. Maybe a loved one died, a relationship ended, or you may lost another job, others' life changes. So this is all normal grieving, where anticipation is there. Anticipation is not there. You don't know that it was going to happen. It just happened in a normal course of time, and whatever happens thereafter, that is a normal grieving. Complicated grieving. The name itself says it is complicated. Formal medical diagnosis, prolonged grief, formally called complicated grief. Prolonged grief means a grief normally stops. We say 4 or 5 stages, like Ross said, 5 stages, dabda, denial, anger, bargaining, and all those things, and finally gets culminated into acceptance. But it generally gets over in few months or maybe in a year, but it prolongs couple of years and more than that. Then it becomes complicated grief because it is difficult to resolve it. It is characterized by the grief reaction intensifying to affect the sufferer's close relationship also, because when you are in grieving process continually, you come under depression. You don't talk to others. People can't understand you. They can't explain you. How can they help you in such a condition? So the relationships also become troublesome in the family. How can they carry on with you? It disrupts the peace of family, peace of home. About 15% of bereaved individuals will suffer from complicated grief. This may be their record in Western countries. It is not so in India. There are cases where people grieve for a prolonged period. But after all, in India, whether you call it a religion or a spirituality, but our faith, our trust in God so much that we accept everything, such things as God willing. God has done it. What can we do about it? If Bhagwan ne kiya, Bhagwan theek karega. And what God does, so I can't question why has He done this or that. Whatever He has done, it is okay. Let me accept it. So such prolonged grief very rarely you find, but you can't rule it out. It happens. If you ask certain psychiatrists and others, maybe you may get certain cases of complicated grief. Grief is in two parts. The first is loss, The second is the remaking of life, that you accept the loss and you start living the life again in spite of the loss. Now when you remake the life, that person is not existing there. He is not in body and form, but yes, his memory, his love is always there when you remake, when you start a new life in his absence. Psychology of grief and bereavement. Remember, my friends, grief is quite common. So if it is happening, it happens. It's just one of the psychological reaction. So take it as such. There is no cowardice. It just happens. And normal internal feeling one experiences in reaction to a loss. You may cry, you may weep. It's all fine, acceptable signs of grief. Although most commonly discussed in reference to the death of a loved one, any major loss can result in a grief reaction. Yes, this can happen, and particularly for a young man, if he loses his job, you just see the thing. For a family man of 5-6 children, if the house gets burnt or gets destroyed in earthquake, then see, so such grief can occur whenever you get confronted with a major loss in the life. Prolonged grief is a reaction to the loss that lasts more than 1 year. I just said that grief, okay, fine, few months, 1 year, but you can't be couple of years and it just carries on. Then it affects everyone in the family. Mourning is the outward expression of the loss of a loved one and usually involves culturally determined rituals. This is what we do whenever somebody dies in our Hindu society. We have some days of mourning. We have certain rituals, Havan and other things on 11th and 12th, and thereafter for a month or two we continue with the shok, mourning, and then we come back to the normal life. Mourning, in fact, it is being expressed at governmental level also. When some popular leader dies, we fly our flags, national flag at half-mast, That's a sign of mourning, signs of respect for those departed souls. So mourning is basically the expression of the loss, but at the same time it's an expression of love and respect for the departed souls, both ways. Potential negative effects of a grief reaction can be significant and often aggravated by grief triggers, events that remind the grievers of their loved one. This happens, but not so much. When an elderly person dies and in next year, when his or her birthday comes, we always, very fondly remembers, and we feel little unhappy also that the person is not there with us to celebrate the birthday. The risk factors for experiencing more serious symptoms of grief for a longer period of time are related to the survivor's own physical and emotional health. If you are mentally and physically robust, then you can take on such shocks very easily. You can bounce back. Definitely it will affect you. You will feel sad. I mean, say, after all, you are a human being. But still, you got resilience, you got power to come back. It will not affect you adversely. Grief-stricken individuals who feel the death of their loved one is unexpected or violent may be at greater risk for suffering from PTSD, major depression, post-traumatic stress disorders, or prolonged grief. Common grief reactions, feelings. People who experience loss may have a range of feelings. This could include shock, numbness, sadness, denial, despair, anxiety, anger, guilt, loneliness, so many of them are there, all basically psychological reactions. Thoughts. Common thought patterns include disbelief, confusion, difficulty concentrating, hallucinations. Physical sensations. Grief can cause physical sensations to tightness, heaviness, and it causes behavior change also. May not be permanent, but yes, definitely temporary. May struggle to fall asleep or stay asleep, सोता ही रहेगा. He or she may also lose energy for enjoyable activities. The person may lose interest in eating or being social. He'll sit at home, he'll not go out, he'll not join any party or any social ceremonies like wedding, etc. Emotional, behavioral, which we saw last time, attitudes, psychological. So let's see how long is too long to mourn. How much time? So we can't say there is no normal time. Like a patient, terminally ill patient, asking a doctor that how many days do I have? When am I going to die? A doctor can't say it. He is not in a position to say because he really doesn't know at all. He can't predict. He is not a god. No? Similarly, here also we can't say how many days one can grieve. One can grieve or one can remain sad and unhappy. Not possible to say this much time is enough. Your grieving process depends on a number of things like your personality, age, belief, and support network. Support network, I said many times in my lectures also, social support is the answer to psychological problem. It's a key. Social support basically comes from the family members, close relatives, and very close friends. If you are working, it comes from your peers, colleagues from your office. If you are studying, then it's your school friends and others. So this is all social support. If you get, it can help. It can make wonders for your distress. With time, the sadness eases, you'll be able to feel happiness and joy along with grief. You'll be able to return to your daily life. So it can be anything, months or 1 year or something like that, but it's difficult to tell you what is the normal time about grieving. Do I need professional help? Yes. If these are the conditions you suffer, you confront, then yes, you might need a professional help. You just could not re-establish a normal routine. You don't want to go to work. How will you eat then? How will your family eat? You need professional help so that you need to join and start working again to earn some money. Feeling of depression. Before you enter into depression, it is better that you manage yourself. Self-help is the best help, but if you can't do it on your own, then professional help, some counselor can help you out. If you have got a feeling that life is not worth living, then my dear friend, definitely you need a counselor because you are on a wrong track. Just because of one death or because of one tragedy in your life, you just start thinking that life is not worth living. You are harming yourself because this will result into suicide, which is not a good way of ending the life. In any case, when you are born, it was not in your hand. So when you die, it should not be in your hand. Therefore, morally, legally, socially, suicide is the worst way to end the life. You need a help, my dear friend. An inability to stop blaming yourself. Come out of it. You haven't done anything wrong. It just so happens that people die. So your loved one has also died, something has happened to your family, it happens. You are not to be blamed at all. Come out, be confident, have self-esteem and start. And for all these factors, if you can't do it, then someone else will do it for you, and that is called a counselor, a therapist. When you are in deep emotional pain, it can be tempting to try to numb your feelings with drugs, alcohol, food. In such a situation, you should remain away from it. You don't work, you just keep drinking, you keep smoking, you are spoiling your life. And if you are a married man with children, you are spoiling the family life also. So it is better in such a situation, get professional help. Before this is the self-management techniques I have given here. Give yourself time. Don't worry, whatever time is there, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 weeks, don't worry about it. Complete your grieving process the way you want to, it's fine. Because there is no normal time involved. Remain in the same process. At the same time, during that time, talk to others, talk to friends and family. Get activated in social life. Because social circle will give you lots of joy. You will be able to live up faster, Meanwhile, take care of yourself physically, physiologically, exercise regularly, go out, spend some time with nature. If you have some hobbies, return to the hobbies. That will give you entertainment, amusement, and join a support group. There must be certain support groups. If support group is not available, at least talk to your friends and other things. So these are all self-management techniques which everybody does, This is not new, we do it. We don't know that we are applying these techniques, but yes, this is what we are doing, and therefore we do not have trouble in coping up with grief. On one side we take it, it's a normal, very normal that people have to die and we have to accept it. On another side, in the grieving process itself, we do feel the loss of our loved one emotionally, but at the same time we just carry on with the life and apply these self-management techniques. So we come back to the life, and then there is no problem of depressions and other negative things which are generally associated with prolonged grief. The grieving process is often harder when the person has unresolved feelings towards or conflicts with the person who has died. This normally happens when you don't have good relations with the person. You feel guilty, you have some regrets. In earlier we spoke what is the difference between guilt and regret. So in such a situation you feel more sad that I should have resolved these differences with him before he expired, So they keeps on lingering in your mind. I can't say, and it will keep on lingering till you are alive. Don't worry about it. If it's getting complicated, then you can visit a social worker, psychologist, but otherwise it is always better to just make compromises with the situations. You should forget about the guilt and regrets about that person. It happened, it has happened now. Done, it is done, can't be undone. Certain factors which affect grief: relationship, closer the relationship, more the grief. Cause of death, if it is accidental, you feel bad. Age, And gender, if very aged, then we say it is a ripe age. Normally we say if a person is around cross 70, is fine. He has already lived his life. So age also matters. If a young one, we feel bad, you see. And in our society, we always say कि he had not seen the life as yet. उसने अभी जिंदगी नहीं देखी है और चला गया, गुजर गया. And therefore we feel very bad when a young child or somebody dies, and that in accident tragically. The grieving person's personality matters. If the person was very jovial, friendly with anybody, laughing, eating, joyful, mixing up with anybody, so if such a personality dies, everybody feels, oh my God, you were such a wonderful person. उसके साथ बहुत मज़ा आता था जब भी बाहर जाते थे, अभी वो मिलेगा नहीं हमें, very bad, So this is the way. If your personality is a very pleasant personality, people like you, people love you, so they will miss this loss and they will feel bad. What support is available? If you have got social support, grieving process becomes easier. Customs and religions, this is also there. In Hindu society, normally we have a bereavement process till 12th day after the death. We call it Baravi, or Baravi ke baad whatever rituals we have, we complete it, and then that process gets over. Religion, spirituality, grief and loss may also cause a person to question his or her faith or view of the world, or it may strengthen the person's faith by providing a new understanding of the meaning of life. Different cultures you can read around. It's very interesting that how people grieve in different parts of the world with different religions. Each person experiences grief in a different way. Often a person feels grief in waves or cycles. All of a sudden you have the memories of him and then you feel really very sad. And next time you just forget him, This means that there are periods of intense and painful feelings that come and go. We discussed earlier that when certain events which are generally associated with that person whom you have lost, who is dead, then your grief, then your memory gets intensified. Like I said, birthday of the person coming next year. Any other, it can be any other event or occasion. People may feel they are making progress with their grief when they are temporarily feeling less grief. But then after some time they may face the grief again. Such changes in grief may occur around significant days such as holidays or birthdays. So this graph goes up and down. Bereavement has got health risk. It predisposes people to physical and mental illness, precipitates illness and health, exacerbates existing illness. This we saw it earlier. Symptoms of grief can be emotional, physical, social, religions. For children and adolescents, it is much more. Reactions are intense. To assess grief, a health caregiver usually asks questions to assess what symptoms the individual is suffering from, and then thereafter it can be decided whether he or she is suffering from normal grief, prolonged grief, or some complicated grief. Symptoms of grief, which we saw in previous lectures. Effects of losing a loved one. The potential negative effects of a grief reaction can be significant. For example, research shows that 40% of bereaved people suffer from some form of anxiety disorder in the first year after the death of loved one. Anxiety disorder, first year after the death of the loved one. So it is normal. This will happen. Treatment of grief, prescription medication from a counselor. Counseling is a more solid approach towards grief. If you or a loved one is having a hard time coping with grief, seek treatment from a health professional or mental health provider. Here we are just saying 7 stages of grief: shock and denial, pain and guilt, anger and bargaining, depression, the upward turn. Now starts upward turn, reconstruction, then acceptance and hope. How will I know when I am done grieving? My grieving is over now, I am fine, okay. It differs from person to person. Every person who experiences a death or other loss must complete a 4 steps grieving process. Accept the loss, number 1. Work through and feel the physical and emotional pain of grief. Adjust to the world living without the person or item lost, and move on with the life. The grieving process is over only when a person completes the 4 steps, and particularly the 4th step, when he moves on with the life. He goes for a work, if he is a student, starts studying, and the life becomes normal. Risk factors of prolonged, it basically physical and emotional health gets deteriorated, and it is risky for a mothers who have lost a child. Situation is different and little serious when a mother loses a child or a child loses a mother. In post-traumatic stress disorder, risk factor is more. People do get nightmares or flashbacks sometimes. This is what about the psychology of grief and bereavement. Thank you, friends.